friend of the show, ironically enough, Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota and mayor in, I forget the town in
Minneapolis.
No, he was the mayor of Minneapolis.
Is he a mayor right now?
No.
Oh, not now. Oh, you're talking about former. Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so he expressed on our show that when it came to whether or not he would actually run for president, he made it very clear that there are two things that would happen. Number one, if he did, it would definitely be on a third-party ticket. There's no way whatsoever that he would run in any of the two major parties. And the other caveat is he would be running within a party infrastructure that essentially has ballot access in all 50 states. Now, at the time, I thought, well, the only party that realistically in 2024 will have, universal, if you will, ballot access is the Libertarian Party. I didn't think that he would necessarily be going in that direction because he kind of has a mix and match of a bunch of different policies, some which are absolutely libertarian, but others that are very progressive and certainly not in line with what I like to consider to be the austerity party, as our friend Steve Grumbine, the Real Progressives, likes to say, which is essentially what the libertarians are. They have a lot of great policies that I agree with. They have a lot of crappy policies that make no sense, in my humble opinion. But with that said, Graham Bensinger, I believe was the name of the podcast that Jesse was on recently. Colin, if you want to cue it up, the clip of Jesse Ventura explaining what his plans are for 2024. Very interesting.
Why do you think you were able to win given how much less money you spent campaigning compared to the other candidates?
Because I was allowed to debate. They made a fatal error. You notice they haven't allowed anybody since. No third party's been allowed to debate since I won.
How many first-time voters came out
that
election?
A lot.
And that was largely the difference, too, wasn't it?
That's how come if I run for president, if they let me in the debates, I'd win that too. Bold talk, isn't it?
What's the likelihood you ever try and run?
Who knows? Let's wait till the Libertarian Convention where the Libertarians announce their candidate and that candidate gets ballot access throughout the whole country. Then you time it out, you spend the least money, you come in, you destroy their two candidates if you're allowed in the debate. If they got the frickin' guts to let me in a debate, I'll come in and destroy their two candidates and steal the election in November, just like I did in Minnesota.
Would you like to be president?
No, not particularly. But in the back of my mind, there's always that patriotic voice saying to me, if not you, then who? Who's going to restore America? Who's going to take on the two-party dictatorship and beat them? Who can do that? Well, I've done it twice. Haven't lost yet.
He's not wrong. Like, he's not wrong.
Jesse's not playing.
Oh, but like he is right that there's no way they can debate him. No, none of them. There's no way.
Oh, I agree. Oh, he's great. He's the best of all worlds, I think. I'm a big fan. I know you guys have interviewed him, talked with him, and I think libertarians would like a lot of his views.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how purist they are. Now, I think that they're smarter than the Green Party in that way, that they might be more strategic, that they might be smarter and not just sort of, just be you're all or nothing like they were when he tried to run with the Green Party. And they're like, no, you don't meet our purity test. But I think he's definitely formidable. And there's no way that they would allow him in a debate. But I don't think they'll allow Cornel West to debate either. Because even though he doesn't fight like Jesse, they're not going to have their way with Cornel West.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah. So is he trying to say he wants to? Is that an announcement there? That's the first I've seen that.
This was on a pretty popular podcast, and it's been viewed several 100,000 times, and he just did this, was it yesterday or Tuesday?
That to me sounds like he's been talking with the Libertarian Party. He wouldn't have said that if it wasn't already something being discussed.
Wow.
And he said that if somebody would put him on a ballot that had where he had access, that he would run for that party. And I do believe that he sees it as a duty. I do. I do think that he truly believes that
He
because
actually
he's
said,
happy living in Mexico and
Yeah.
living his happy little life.
he
Like
a-
he
Graham
is.
actually asked, I actually listened to the whole interview. Graham actually said in the interview, do you want to be president? And he said, no. But I feel that we're at a time where somebody who has the experience and is not co-opted by that system has to step up to the plate. And I do believe he is that person in many ways. I like Dr. West a lot, and I love the fact that he's out there and he's doing it, and I would absolutely support him. But if you're asking me who I think has the gravitas to actually be taken seriously as a presidential candidate, oh, Jesse, absolutely, 100%. I mean, he has the ability. I was just telling Jen while the video was playing, I said, the big difference between somebody like Cornel West and Jesse Ventura, Jesse's a killer. Like, he will go for the throat in a way that others will not.
He's not referring to them as his brothers and sisters when he's debating them.
Yep. And he was governor. I mean, he's got the credentials too. I mean, he's got the experience as well. So he's the full package. This is the first I've heard of it. This is big news right here.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I like that we could do that for you because it's exciting. And I agree. I think that having executive branch experience is key. Like, that to me is way more important. It is. And people don't recognize that. So when people are running, and I always say, okay, you're running to be the chief executive of our country. What are your qualifications for that job? And a lot of people are kind of taken aback because I do not feel that way about Congress. With Congress, I feel like that's the people's house. I feel like it should be a variety of different people representing different people. But with the executive branch, I don't think that. I want somebody who is qualified and has a certain amount of credentials, both academically and professionally, that qualifies them to be a chief executive. I do. And I don't need that to be everyday people. That's what Congress is. Like, I feel like that. And I want a highly credentialed president. I just do.
Yeah. Jesse has that presence you're talking about. Like, that's a dude where when he talks, I don't care what you think of him, you are listening to him. Cornel West does too, but Jesse has that presidential type. To me, some people might think I'm crazy because they might look at you can only choose the big names. You can only choose Biden or whatever, Michelle Obama. But when I look at it, I look at Jesse like that's a leader right there, and he's very good on a lot of positions. I think he's pro 2A. I'm pro-choice. He's pro-choice. Like I'm kind of on different sides of stuff, and so is he. And it's not even where you're at. It's more like, how do you present it? Like, that's what it is to me. And he presents it in a way like, here's my take on it. Here's how I defend it. And you can respect it or not.
To our libertarian-leaning friends out there that we have spoken to, have been on the show, Clint Russell, Martha Bueno, Cal Roth, I have been adamant that you're all going to eventually have to get off your effing high horse when it comes to universal health care. Because if you think you're ever going to stand a chance of being relevant, you cannot have austerity when it comes to health care. No way, no how. Everybody has to have at least some semblance of reality, knowing that Jesse is a supporter of universal health care.
Yes.
And if you try in any way to hold that candle over his head, like, well, you can't support universal health care.
Well, and that's where he differs from a lot of people in the Libertarian Party. Well, that is one of the progressive stances that he takes. And the question is, will the Libertarians be smart enough to embrace that?
I don't know. I think the Mises Caucus is running it right now, the Libertarian Party. So I think they're open-minded because they were really friendly with Robert Kennedy Jr., RFKJ. They really liked him, Dave Smith, Comic Dave Smith and them. So I am for universal health care. I will say I am very salty at how the pandemic was handled. And I have concerns, and I think that's got to be handled. So that's, for me, you can't have a pandemic like that. And I'm not even going to get into it. Just, you have a situation. What job do you go to where you have a big thing that happened? And it was like a fire drill. Everybody had to go act. And then after it's done, there's no review on what happened. Like, there's really no, like, universal. Yeah, I'm like, before we get to universal, like, this is like, what happened? Like, what are we going to do next time? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? It's like, so, but, and then the other.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Finish.
Well, no, I was going to go. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's almost like a chicken and an egg thing, though, because I feel like if we had decent universal single payer healthcare, then it would have been handled much differently and much better. And we would have been able to accommodate much differently and much better. And we would just have a whole different system in place that didn't have a for-profit middleman in the middle. So like that is the thing that holds us up every time in terms of getting the service to the people. You have something in the middle of that is just literally siphoning money from it, that brings nothing else to the table. And that is something that we have to go around every single time in terms of whether it's dealing with the insurance companies or big pharma. And that right there is something that no other country allows big pharma to screw over their people like ours does here. And they don't protect us. Their job is to protect us from corporations, not to help corporations make profits off of us. Like the whole role of them should not be to make profits for big business. That's not their purpose. And I believe that's how the pandemic was handled, as it would be in a for-profit healthcare system.
Yep.
Friend of the show, Brenda O'Reilly. I flew to France to have my first son. The flight and staying with my husband's family was way cheaper since the service was taken care of. The average
there's a tweet. There was a tweet that went viral. I don't know if you saw that. A woman talking about how her birth was like $40K or something crazy like that.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me at all.
The average cost of birthing a child in America is over $10,000.
So if anything slightly goes wrong, or there's a complication, or there's whatever, yes, and it's exponential. It's absurd.
And this is also why when it comes, and again,
and we also have the highest woman and baby mortality rates in the entire developed world, and it's the most expensive. How does that make sense?
No sense. Yep.
Yeah, and this is probably why you don't identify with the conservative right, because at the end of the day, there is a level of hypocrisy that exists when you base your life on the Bible, if you will. And so it's not even written in the Bible that abortion is a sin. But nevertheless, my point is that there is this pro-life movement that for some reason is so adamantly concerned about the ability to protect life. But then at the same time, they're not advocating for universal health care, which makes it possible financially for people who may be in financial dire straits to have a child. They have a child when there isn't that safety net of universal health care, and then they are literally in debt for God knows how long on top of the costs of having to raise a child. So, that's the part on the libertarian side that, to me, the biggest hurdle is recognizing that you need government-funded, not government-run healthcare. Metalopoly, I'm looking at you.
Well said, Peter. I mean, those are bars right there. The viewpoints don't line up. If you're pro-life, okay, then why aren't you for some type of universal? Or here's my thing: because a lot of people get triggered by that term. So let's think of something better. You haven't come up with a better idea, and you're not going after big pharma. Trump didn't go after big pharma, so he did the opposite. So give me a better idea before you knock mine. That's all I want to know.
Right. I mean, I honestly don't know anybody who has not had some sort of real negative experience with our healthcare system, except for some older people that are happy with if you are on Medicare and you also have the privilege of having a good supplement, like you have you have money, whatever. Mm-hmm. Those are the only people I know that are happy with their healthcare. Are the people that have Medicare and are also wealthy enough to have a good supplement. Everyone else, no one's happy with their healthcare. No one wants to deal with it. It's horrible.
And if that's not enough, the other major issue that is the roadblock in the Libertarian Party that will come to the forefront with Jesse Ventura is he is a major, major advocate for the labor movement. And so you are either on the side of workers or you're on the side of shareholders. Now, I don't know about you, but if the libertarian principles are really put on the table, then they would be on the side of labor and not shareholders, because the system is rigged so that shareholders basically are in a state of high-end socialism where they can't lose. There's basically no way that the rich can lose in our current economic system. Labor needs to come in and create that balance. Right now, it's on its way. I think having a voice like Jesse Ventura could be very powerful in that regard. And so being able to organize for a living wage, for universal health care, that alone, I'm not even talking about foreign policy, which we'll get to in a minute, because there is a side of the Libertarian Party that is very solid and does not make any exceptions for, which we'll get to. But I do think from the healthcare and from the labor perspective, especially, this is where the rubber is going to have to meet the road for the Libertarians if they are going to have a viable candidate running their party, because labor is all the rage these days.
And it is Jesse. Jesse's definitely a labor guy.
He's got he's got a really good package. You know, I always caution on the union part is because sometimes they become institutionalized and basically another arm of the Democrat Party. But in theory, I'm all on the labor side. I think libertarians are on the labor side. I think the problem libertarians have, and I don't want to speak for all libertarians. I'm not I just became into this like 3 years ago. So, but from what I hear and read, the problem that they have is they don't like a group of people negotiating on their behalf. This very independent mind state where it's like, I'm the boss. Like if I want a higher raise, more pay, then I negotiate it or I go somewhere else. But I am obvious. I think they are on that side, but however they articulate it, they've got to be able to articulate it. And I think they struggle with that. Jesse's good there.
Yeah.
Definitely agree on that point. And I also think what's important about the labor organizing, which is where a lot of the libertarian mindset about labor comes to mind, which is I don't want to be told that just because the consensus amongst the group is we're all negotiating for this and this is what we're sticking with, I don't necessarily want to be a part of it. Well, you know what? The way labor is being constructed in this country, I think it does have to evolve, especially the old guard labor unions where basically you have your rank and file and then you have your leadership, particularly the union bosses, which are no different than CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and dare I say, mafia organizations, because that's how they operate. And we've seen that in the state of Florida. We've seen that in a lot of places. If you don't want to be a part of the labor negotiation and you want to have that opt-out opportunity as a laborer, there has to be some opportunity there for somebody to say, I respect what you're fighting for, but I will still be your brother in arms and I will still fight for your right, but I cannot stand by I want to stand on my own. I do not want to be part of the labor union. And you know what, if that's the case, then I think certain industries are going to have to open. They're going to have to be more liberal, if you will, in that regard, as far as what
I don't support right to work states.
No, neither do I.
No, that's, again, well said. I think that's the libertarian. Maybe it's just me. I don't hear a clear position on that. So I want to hear that. Did Joe Jurgensen even talk about that? I don't even think she really got into that.
No, she was no different than Howie Hawkins as far as I'm concerned. Candidates that were just running on the ticket, it didn't really matter what it is that they stood for. But, the one thing that I always found so interesting, the Democratic Party today still talks about Ralph Nader and still talks about Jill Stein.
I love Ralph Nader.
Joe Jorgensen actually took the vote share away from Trump in Wisconsin in 2020. You never, ever hear the GOP or Trump or anybody ever talk about that, ever. Mm-hmm. And they would have a legitimate gripe to say, if Jorgensen wasn't on the ballot, this might have worked out.
Yeah.
They don't play that game. Their attitude is, we'll circle the wagons and we'll kick your ass next time. That's how they roll. And I think that's, again, people, there is something to be said in our country's culture of being attracted to leaders who want to kick ass and take names. And that is actually something that Jesse Ventura has.
Oh, yeah.
So I agree.
That's the reason why they would want to like him. But I do think if there is a major, major factor here, why I think the Libertarians are open to having him run on their ticket is because he's anti-war. And he is very much anti-Ukraine war. And that is a huge thing right now when you consider how that money is being spent hand over fist. And on top of what just happened in Maui, we all know this is only going to get worse as we go forward. But this idea that they were being offered $700 as compensation for losing everything. I mean, if
and on the same
insulting.
day, how much to Ukraine?
Another,
in the same day.
Like another couple $100 million. I mean, if you just measure that money and what that would mean to the people of Maui, instead of getting $700, you might be getting $70,000 or something more. I mean, again, still not enough. But at least that's a start.
$700.
I mean, it's so
insulting.
It's insulting.
Yeah, and you even saw people on the right say the same thing. Now, maybe they were just trying to get at Biden, but they were still right. It was insulting. I wouldn't even have came out with that. To me, it's just if you're not going to be able to do something a little bit more. Yeah,
who thought that would make a good look,
especially in the shadow of Ukraine, because that same day. The same day, like an hour after we found out or something, the Ukraine stuff popped.
Yeah.
More money. So
And I also think that the big difference between somebody like Cornell or even RFK, who tepidly say we have to get out of Ukraine, even Marianne, same thing. Jesse will stand up there and say, we're getting the F out of Ukraine, and that is that. End these effing wars that are BS. And on top of the fact that the guy was a Navy SEAL, I mean, to me, you're talking about somebody who put his life on the line in the most useless war in our nation's history, which is Vietnam. And so to say that he could actually hold water with people who would try to tell him that he's wrong, you're not telling that guy he's wrong, because he ain't going to take it. And
very knowledgeable dude too. Yeah, so.
Yeah. And then the last thing, which I think will be very big for libertarians, is that he is a complete civil libertarian across the board.
Yes.
The way he fights, the way he fought for cannabis legalization in Minnesota.
Always, yeah.
I mean, credit to the governor of Minnesota, who had invited Jesse to be there when he was in Mexico for the signing of cannabis legalization in the state. I mean, that was really big, among other things that he fights for. Free speech advocate, Second Amendment enthusiast. I mean, there's a lot of things there
for sure.
in terms of a crossover candidate. If Jesse decides that he's willing to go for it on the libertarian ticket, he's going to be a threat. There's no question about it.
Oh, that'll be amazing.
And what I would also love to see is that you see how Cornell is right now sitting at about 6-7% support, and he doesn't even really have a campaign as of this moment. I can't even imagine what it would be like if Jesse got in there on the libertarian ticket and what his poll numbers would look like right out of the gate. They would probably, shit a brick.
Oh, yeah.
Know what to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.